So hi, welcome everyone. Today I am going to be chatting to my good friend Del Chittim, and he is the Chief Operating Officer of Rescue Freedom International. Welcome, Del.
Sarah, it's so good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. And, thank you also to Rescue Freedom International, who are one of our main partners. One of the main partners of It's a Penalty. And the thing I love about Rescue Freedom International, apart from your work, which we're going to be hearing more about later, is just your whole approach to partnership and the whole holistic approach. So, you really care about us as individuals. You want to invest into our lives through training. But I love that. I love the fact that, there is that balance of investing into our work and coming alongside us, and the work we're doing, but also looking after us as individuals.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to be doing. We've come alongside various different partners over the years, and so many times we hear funding's important and help with operations is important and all these things. But the thing we hear most often is that just there's a loneliness in this fight, and to be united with others that are like-minded, that are also facing these same challenges against the second largest, fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, it's challenging. And so to unite people together, to say, let's join arms, let's link arms together and do this fight together has been so meaningful for our partners.
Yeah, and I think you're so right. I mean, It's a Penalty's focus is very much on working together, on collaboration. And for me, partnership is all about relationships.
You guys have done that so well historically, to build upon, each campaign. You guys wrap around services for all types of industries, but also local partners that are nonprofits, charities, on the ground, NGOs that are also doing like work in those spaces that you're launching campaigns. It's been beautiful to see the collaboration that you guys foster everywhere that you go.
Yeah, thanks, Del. I mean, I think it's so important that, for It's a Penalty, we are global, but we're local. But
Yes.
I'd love to hear more about the work of Rescue Freedom International. Can you tell us kind of a brief overview of how you work locally across countries, particularly focusing on prevention and care?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. I don't know if this is a universal thing, if this is something that all of us did as kids, but when I was a kid, I would take dominoes and we would, stack them up in line, and then we kind of knock them over in a chain reaction until they were all falling down. We kind of look at our strategy that way. And for us, we see 12 key solutions that need to be brought to bear to fully end sex trafficking in any of the regions around the world that we're working. And we think of them as dominoes, that these solutions, we have to push on them and top them over to actually topple this issue completely of sex trafficking. And so what we try to do is in every region, build effective programs and partnerships with agencies that are running these programs, offering these 12 solutions. So those solutions are like awareness, legislation, law enforcement, prevention, counter demand, outreach, rescue, restoration, all of those different things. And we offer those 12 solutions really three ways. So one would be we try to come alongside what we call a local partner, and we accelerate their work. So if they're doing what they're doing, we want to come alongside and build that sense of community, maybe with others, offer funding, offer coaching, capacity building. So when we started working in Thailand a few years ago in 2017, our local partner there had one safe home. And now today they're operating multiple safe homes in Bangkok and Pattaya. They have prevention, education programs. They have a 5-story facility that's separate from their safe homes that does all of these educational opportunities and job readiness training and counseling and emergency shelter for women that they're intervening with. And in COVID-19, they actually dove into one of the most at-risk vulnerable communities there in Bangkok, where they saw an unusually high number of boys and girls being trafficked out of, and they're doing prevention programming there. So the idea of accelerating actually takes us oftentimes from a safe home to preventing people from ever needing one in the first place. So that's the idea of acceleration. How do we accelerate local partners? And that's our That's our primary. That's the dominant thing that we do. If we can't find partners to accelerate one of these 12 solutions in the areas that we're trying to do that in, we try to incubate or kickstart a new partner. And so in the Middle East right now, we're working with a small team that's been invited to work there by a Middle Eastern government that said, hey, we need someone to come in and help identify victims, help train our client care teams on how to do evidence-based trauma-informed care technique. And so we're part of this small team that's going into this Middle Eastern government to do this work.
Amazing.
Which is really important because it's, Middle East is it's difficult to work there. Oftentimes there's not a lot of agencies. And so it was hard to accelerate, but what we could do is incubate something new. And so we do a little bit of incubation less. We prefer to accelerate. When we can't accelerate or incubate, we try to do innovation or start a program ourselves. And so right now, there's a lot of work to legalize prostitution in the US and other countries globally. And as we were looking at that, we tried first to figure out ways that we could accelerate a local partner. Well, that wasn't really a good fit. So we were looking at incubation. But really, it's such an important issue right now. We said, let's innovate, let's run this program ourselves. So one of our teammates, Rita Hernandez, she's our Latin American coordinator. She actually has a PhD in policy, and her dissertation was specifically on policy to abolish sex trafficking. And so she stepped into a new role to be our policy director. And that's kind of an innovation piece for us, where we can't really make an acceleration or an incubation work. We'll choose to launch the program ourselves. And so that's, those are kind of, we have these 12 solutions that we say the best way to do this, we believe, is through local partners. There's just hundreds of people out there doing brilliant work. And if we can come alongside them and help them do what they're doing even better, we feel like that's a great use of this strategy. But sometimes we feel like there's, maybe we need to launch something new, or we need to do some of these programs ourselves. But the primary way that we do it is through that acceleration of those 12 dominoes, pushing them down in these different regions around the world. So we kind of describe it as we're a strategy, not so much a program, which is a little odd in this space. We're not tied to any particular approach or programmatic idea, but we are deeply loyal to these dominoes, to these strategies that we've developed. So.
And you focus on contextualizing them as well, depending on which country you're in.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. There's a lot of different approaches to prevention work. There's a lot of different approaches to restorative work. And many of them are wildly effective and wildly different at the same time, oftentimes, as you say, based on the context. And so we want to find partners that they already know the culture, they already know the language, they're deeply ingrained in the community in which they're working. And we're not trying to take any away from that. What we do try to do is link partners together saying, I wish I knew how to do this better. Who in the Rescue Freedom Network is doing this better than anybody else? And we'll actually make those connections happen. We funded field trips, is what we call it, for a team here that's saying, I want to launch this type of restoration service. We'll say, well, we'll take a portion of your team. We'll pay for them to go over here and learn from these folks over here that are doing this better than anybody else in the world. And then they come back and they do that same program, and they're 5 years ahead. Like we'll take people to go see it, and they're just going, I can't believe that they're only doing this for 6 months. I mean, it looks like they've been doing this for years. But the key is that they're taking all of the learning that's been happening over here and just transplanting that back into their cultural context, modifying it. But they're able to push forward light years ahead, blowing past all the hurdles that this organization had to figure out, because they're able to just transplant a lot of that education where they're at.
So important. So how many countries are you working in now?
Yeah, right now we're in 21 different countries, and we work with 29 different local partners across our network. And it's a beautiful thing to see these agencies support one another, encourage one another. We're all in this thing together.
Well, like you were saying, human trafficking and exploitation is the fastest growing illegal business in the world.
Yeah.
And, I think, more and more people are becoming aware of it. And so it's important to keep talking about it. But just highlighting the work you're doing, the fact you're in 21 countries, because no country's exempt from it. It's everywhere. And it's fueled through the internet as well, a sort of major event. So, congratulations on the work you're doing. Now, talking about contextualizing, where obviously the whole world is going through this pandemic, COVID-19. Yeah. How have you seen in those 21 countries, how have you seen COVID impact the work you're doing?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch. There's been different things pop up in different regions of the world, and so the response has looked a little different in different countries in which we're working in. Some countries have the freedom to be able to operate a little more aggressively than others. In some countries, lockdown is so severe that we've had safe home staff, for instance, if they're working in one of the safe homes. Oftentimes they can't move back and forth when their shift changes because the curfews and the lockdowns are so stringent. So we ended up operating 19 new projects in 15 countries throughout the network as COVID launched, because we saw so many individuals that formerly we had been working in what we call outreach relationships, which are individuals who are actually right now being trafficked, but we built relationship with them, offering some kind of programming for them. And so many of those, they're trafficker because the bar or the brothel or the illicit massage business through which they were trafficking individuals, because that was closed down due to COVID, they actually released a lot of these individuals. So the people who've been working with, thousands of them, were all of a sudden free. So what we've been working towards, well, they were all of a sudden freed up, but we didn't have thousands of beds available, which created a challenge. So we sprung into action a lot of emergency shelter, a lot of emergency food, clothing. I mean, just many of these individuals were free, but they had nothing but the clothes on their back, literally in many cases. So trying to help them, many of them find their way back home if it was safe. And for those that weren't, it was a process of trying to integrate them into current programming. But oftentimes we had to augment housing and food and different things like that. So the other thing that we saw was just a ton of increased vulnerability to trafficking. For those that were kind of, maybe before COVID, they were just maybe out of reach. Their vulnerability was not at the level that a trafficker would have preyed on them. But due to COVID, it actually dipped them into that category where now they were in a state of vulnerability to be preyed on by a trafficker. So increasing our reach there with prevention and intervention type programming to keep them at a place to try to lift them out of that, increase their resiliency through education or job readiness or whatever it is, to where they could resist the ploy of a trafficker. Was also important. But we also, this was interesting, Sarah, we didn't anticipate this, but a few weeks into breaking of COVID, we saw a huge number of graduates of programs. So they had gone through, a restoration program. They were graduates, but oftentimes in an entry-level job, maybe had their first job outside of exploitation. And because they were in an entry-level job, about 80% of our graduates lost their form of employment. So they had graduated, they were on a stable track to a life of freedom and purpose, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and they're just back into the state of vulnerability. So we ended up with a lot of programming as well to provide some flexible funding to help them get through with food and with just basic elements until they were able to get back into the job force again. And so that's been an ongoing process. In each country's been a little bit different, but significant hit for us with COVID, but at the same time, tremendous opportunity in the midst of all of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think the timing, also for us, for its penalty, and you're partnering us as well. You're one of our partners in, launching the Liam Neeson "What is Human Trafficking" campaign, has been quite poignant in response to COVID-19, because like you were saying, it is, human trafficking and exploitation is increasing as a result. People are more vulnerable. And so it's so important for us to be equipped to help prevent it. And, as Liam Neeson graciously agreed to to do a short video educating about what is human trafficking. And you know, part of the reasons we asked him is because so many people will say to us, I don't really understand what human trafficking is, but I have watched the film Taken. And, you know, of course, you know, those of you who have seen, those of us who've seen the movie, it's about two young girls, one of whom plays his daughter in the film. And they're abducted as they're traveling around Europe, and then they're trafficked and exploited sexually. And whilst that is one form of human trafficking, a vast majority are trafficked and exploited by people they know within their own communities. Why do you think, why was it so important for you, this campaign?
Yeah, we were so excited about this campaign because it's such a unique, and I think it's a reflection of all that It's a Penalty does. What you guys are doing, and it's very unusual in this space. It's really unique and special in this space. What we've seen over the years is so many people, you know, 8-10 years ago when we first started in this effort, you've seen the same thing, I think. You know, when we would talk about what we were trying to do in the world, people would look at us like we had two heads. You know, like human slavery, like trafficking, like what is this? Like we've never heard of this. Now, you know, almost any country in which we're working, when we talk about the effort that we're doing, so many people are going, "Oh, I've heard so much about this, but what do I do? Like, how do I take action with this?" And I think this is one of the things that's really special about It's a Penalty, and particularly this campaign. It was really clear about helping people understand and empower them to say, this is how you can identify a victim of trafficking, and this is what you can do about it. And we watched our community really dive in, particularly into those elements. And I think that's one of the things that's just so special about what It's a Penalty is doing in general as well, is that people, through the work of It's a Penalty, they're aware of not only that this is a significant issue, but that they can be a part of the solution.
Exactly.
And by leveraging these cultural influencers, you guys have a unique ability and way to connect with, you know, athletes and people that are in media. These cultural influencers will be able to help the culture actually say, this is something significant enough. I don't believe that we can abolish this issue unless it kind of comes out of the shadows a bit more and becomes a centerpiece, and more cultural influencers saying, we have to do something about this. This is a great injustice. This is one of the greatest injustices of our time. Absolutely. And we have to be a part of the solution. As that's taking place, we see more and more people saying, well, how do I, you know, someone that I'm following, someone that I respect and admire their opinion, now they're motivating me to say, I've got to be a part of this. That's really important. In fact, one of our 12 dominoes is cultural influence. And we feel like It's a Penalty does that actually better than anybody else on the planet right now. And I think the campaign with Liam Neeson was a prime example of how effective that really is.
Yeah, thanks, Del. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen this short 2-minute video where Liam Neeson educates about what is human trafficking, but also about the signs to look out for, which Del, you touched on, and then encourages everyone to make a report and to know more. For those of you who haven't seen it, because we actually launched it 4 weeks ago, just digitally, and over 2 million people have watched that so far. And so please do go to knowthesignsnow.org. That's knowthesignsnow.org. Watch the film, share it, and then familiarize yourself with the signs to look out for. And if you want to make a report, if you suspect something or you're a victim, then on knowthesignsnow.org, there'll be a link that you can click to make a report, and it'll go to a map of the world. And wherever you are in the world, put your cursor over that part of the world, and it'll come up with all the different mechanisms by which you can make a report. So I really encourage you all to do that. And the other thing I wanted to say was Liam Neeson also made a 30-second version of that film, which is going to be launched next month on American Airlines, Cathay Pacific, and Emirates and Japanese Airlines. So if you're flying on one of those planes, then do take a picture and share it on social media. It's also going to be shown in Hilton hotels at Miami Airport. So yes, it's one of those campaigns that's got longevity, and we really hope that it is going to continue to make a difference. So thank you, Del, so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for the work you do. And it's just great that you're partnering us.
Sarah, we're honored to be partnered with It's a Penalty. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this.